remember April 26, 1991, because all day long they kept talking about the weather was just right for tornadoes. But I've lived in Kansas all of my life and really never seen a tornado. There was never just, it never really was close to home. So I didn't pay that much attention to it. We were having family over that night for a cookout, and I just did not listen or really even pay attention to what was being predicted that could happen. Um, as the evening progressed, though, we started hearing the sirens and actually had friends who called to offer their basement to us because we didn't have a basement in our home. And we were like, no, we're fine. There's never been a tornado. We're not worried about it. And then I remember my husband and his brother standing in our front yard, and they weren't speaking, they were just pointing. And they came in the house and they yelled for us to run and to go to the neighbors who had a basement for cover. And all I remember seeing was a tornado, but it was so wide it didn't look like a tornado. All the tornadoes I've ever seen were thin and twisty, and this was just a wall. And the roar was like a train. We grabbed our son, we went to the neighbor's basement and just waited. And when we came out, it looked like nothing had happened because where we were, we weren't a direct hit, we weren't in a direct line. So we kind of thought it was not a big deal. And immediately we lost power. We started hearing reports on the radio, though, of the convenience store on the corner had been hit. So we got in our car and started driving and got to the end of our street, which was 2 blocks long, and started seeing the devastation. And we drove around town, and there were parts of town that were so devastated that you couldn't remember what used to be there because there was nothing to indicate what used to be there. And I remember looking at what had been the mobile home park and just staring at an empty field that was just full of debris. There were no trees. There wasn't even a mobile home. And just looking and wondering what was there before, and then realizing how many homes had been destroyed. And as we started progressing through town, the police started telling people to go back. They were closing off the town. They didn't want people coming from Wichita driving in. So we went back to our home and started getting reports that there were actually deaths. And it really became home when they said our church was going to be used as a temporary morgue to take the bodies to. And I remember just sitting at our home. We didn't have electricity. It had gotten dark. The storm had kind of moved through. And this was really before cell phones. So you're just kind of in the dark. We didn't know what was going on. We didn't have phones. And just being, I think, overwhelmed with how large it was and how much devastation. We had all of our family with us because they were coming over. Everyone was there except my dad. And he was actually at home and had been sleeping because he was going through chemotherapy. And he was really sick. And so he had not come to our house that night. And where he and my mom lived, they hadn't lost their phone lines. So someone had called and eventually woke him up. Someone from Augusta had called and said, "Are you okay?" And he was like, "Yeah, I'm fine." He didn't know what had happened. And they told him that Andover had been hit. And he knew that everybody was at our house in Andover. And I just remember several hours after the tornado hit, seeing my dad walking down the road towards our house. And he couldn't drive to our house because they shut off the town, but he drove as close as he could, and then he walked to make sure that we were okay. And once he knew that his family was safe, he started walking to work because he worked for Southwestern Bell, and he knew that they needed him to start working to get phone lines up. So after he checked on the family, he walked to work, and I think he worked for 2 weeks straight after that, just trying to get phones restored and get the town back.